It looks like an impossible task. 1 year and you have been into building yourself, and you know you are in a situation where there is more bureaucracy than in other countries. I mean, worse. English, some sort of heritage, disorganized labor force, whatever. So now you're confronted with a task.
Well, what's interesting is that I've become a pretty sophisticated guy at building, and I know that having worked for years now building, I guess I was a pretty good candidate to choose to be. We'll just give you the money. He said, you're going to be in charge of the whole project. You'll be over the medical planning, you'll be over the construction, and you'll be over the architecture. You'll be the head guide over the whole thing. And
but a hospital is a special case, and India is a special case.
First of all, when I went to the World Health Organization in Geneva, and through some political friends, I met with the head of the World Health Organization and his whole board, and told them what I wanted to do, and they out huge picture after picture of all their failures, that this model will fail. I don't care, it'll be a cultural thing where they will be frightened to come because you're going out in the middle of a place that's living as it was 2,000 years ago. You'll run out of money. The mere fact of the cleanliness and so forth, you'll have a death rate that's unbelievable because of the dust and the dirt. And they said, they just brought out, here was Guyana, here was the Congo, here was Venezuela, and there were pictures all around the whole place. And I mean, they're just telling me, you're crazy, don't do it, you're insane, it'll never happen, it doesn't make any difference whatsoever.
I've seen a similar thing and filmed it in Kenya, Flying Doctors of East Africa. They brought a mobile unit into the bush for Maasai tribesmen, and there was a X-ray station in it, all really sophisticated. And as it was in the bush, you had 5 fairly flat steps leading up into the interior of this container. And the Maasai, for reasons completely unknown, did not dare to step the steps.
Yes.
And they had to have training by local people to tell them, and they were stepping step for step as if they were treading on raw eggs. So, and it was a failure, and we do not know why. So
it was a cultural failure, and I saw all of them. These people don't, in the state of Andhra Pradesh, there's 1 doctor for every 125,000 people, and they're in cities. And this is a country of 75% of small villages that are living in an ancient way. They have, I wouldn't call them witch doctors, but they have ancient, organic medicines that they've been using forever. You chew this leaf for that and this for that. And even the idea of a structure that was approachable was, they said that we built one hospital, and because of just the size of it, it scared them off so much that they wouldn't even come near it, because only temples were built like that. And the idea of what medicine was, and these machines and all this stuff. But there was one chair that was empty at the table of the 10 people who were on the committee, head committee of the World Health Organization. It was a Japanese gentleman who was the chairman. And he came late. And he had on, he was a Sikh, he had on his turban. And he sat down, and the guy said, what's going on? He said, well, this guy is crazy. He's trying to build this hospital out in Andhra Pradesh in the middle of the desert for the poorest of the poor and all this stuff. And he turned to me and he said, what organization are you trying to do this for? And I said, for Sri Sathya Sai Baba. And he said, if there's one person in the world that can pull it off, it's going to be him. And I left, and they are all still naysayers to the end. And he said, he encouraged me, I remember as I left the room, he said, go for it. He said, he can do it. Because he's the master, he's the national treasure, he's a guru of gurus, they're attracted to him. And the villagers, he's the king of the poor, he's the guru to the poor.
But you were already how many weeks into this year? That was
this was what was so awful. He sent me off, and he's so gracious and sweet. So all these very wealthy devotees from all over Malaysia and Indonesia and India and Chennai and Bangalore and this and that and all, they were all coming, and they were bringing architects and they had models. And I'd sit with him, and he'd sit there, and he would very graciously look at them. They'd take the tops off and show them how this and show them the credentials. He said, oh, very good, very happy, very nice. And he was just sat there week after week. And I'm going, I said, Swami, you know, I've already met with Larsen Turbo. They said it's impossible. I met with the World Health Organization, which he sent me to. And I even went down to the Hospital Corporation of America that built 1,000 hospitals at that point all over the world. They said it'll take 3 years just to plan. The biggest problem is going to be the air conditioning, because if the dust and open heart surgeries and all this advanced surgery that you're planning, the mortality rate will be 25% because of infection. And they said that alone, and then it's going to take 3 years to build. And I'm going back there. I'm going, Swami, we don't even have an architect at this point. He hasn't chosen. He's letting all these people come, and it's the most beautiful play I'd ever seen in my life. And finally I said, Swami, you know, we've only got 10 months left. He said, yes, you've wasted so much time. I said, yes, Swami, I've wasted so much time. He said, go to England, you will find the architect, bring him back. And I flew to England, where I was living at the time, and I went down to, flight arrives in the morning, and I love Guinness, and there's a little pub it used to be where the Grenadier Guards had their mess. It's called the Grenadier, and it's in a little mews off Belgravia, and I went down to get a Scotch egg and a pint of Guinness, because I just love the stuff, and it's my life, and I've lived in England 38 years, and I love the place so. And this friend of mine happens to come in. He said, oh, I was at a lecture at the Royal College yesterday, and this Professor Keith Critchlow, the king of Saudi Arabia, is giving him this chair because just like the Tibetans have, if you see the Tonkas and the paintings, they're all geometric. Everything is about geometrics. And the same thing with the Muslim race. They're almost vortexes into other dimensions, or it's all based on geometry. They say that God exists or in this dimension in 3 ways: sound, light, and geometry. So this immediately was fascinated, and found out that this guy was the king of sacred geometry. And so I went over to his office, and at the Royal College, and immediately after, I think, my 3rd pint of Guinness, and I met this man. He was a beautiful, and I'm going to give you a tape of his. You won't believe how important this man's discoveries are. Sai Baba actually said his 3rd eye was open. And he is the discoverer of the ancient geometry, and his lectures on Chartres Cathedral and all the others are unbelievable. You will be mystified by this wonderful, sweet, wonderful man. And I told him that I was doing this project and that Sai Baba had sent me. He said, Sai Baba? He said, oh, I know all about Sai Baba. He said, in fact, I just did Krishnamurti's ashram in India just recently. And I heard all about him. He said, well, he needs an architect. Will you come with me tomorrow to India and meet Sai Baba? He says, yes, of course. And we got on a plane, we came over here, and Baba immediately called us in and started giving him instructions. He didn't even say, you're the one. He just said, no, this is the way it's going to be, and you do this, and da-da-da. And I got the Hospital Corp. They have an English division. They were doing all the medical planning. Larsen Turbo were the biggest builders now in Asia, and we're the biggest builders here at this time. We're just coming up. Do the building work. We had 2,000 men a shift. We did day and night shifts. And the plans were coming. This is called a design-build job. That meant that you designed it as you were building it. And we were 2 days away.
On the run.
On the run. I mean, we didn't know what we were going to build in 2 days because we didn't have any plans. because the medical plans are so very, very complex and important. Then you've got this sacred geometrist that says, no, 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 it has to be like this and it has to be like that. And then you've got these builders and you're out in the middle of India and you've got 2,000 workers who are getting paid 50 cents a day and lights up at night that aren't quite wonderful. Why someone wasn't killed, I don't know. And we worked with 4,000 people day and night from that moment on, and literally someone would arrive from England with the medical planning and the architectural plans 2 days before we knew even what we were going to build next. So we just ordered all the wire and all the concrete and all of this and all that and all the medical equipment and everything, and just hopes that we would get ready because it was going to open in a year. And the Prime Minister, Prime Minister Rao, who's actually the one who changed the laws that opened India to investment of the world, was going to open the hospital, who was a devotee of Sai Baba, as many politicians and many prime ministers have been. And Mr. Ramakrishna, who was the vice chairman of Larsen & Toubro, the two of us were working like dogs, and we just looked at each other. From my experience and her experience, we were going, this is just not going to happen. We'll never get this open in a year. And Swami would say, yes, we're open. He would tell people, we're in 1 year we will open, the Prime Minister will be here, he will open the hospital, and blah, 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 blah. And Critchlow literally would say to the medical planners, I'm sorry, you can't put this equipment there, and you can't put this electricity wiring here, and you can't do this. You have to fit what I build into this space. And that is actually built on sacred geometry, which we can go into, and I'll let you, yeah. when you read about Mr. Critchlow and see this, you'll go, oh my
Let's
God.
Pass that one
yeah,
now.
that's a 5-hour conversation. So Critchlow, I said, let's get the facade up first, because we know the Prime Minister coming. So we got the facade up, and you know, the interior was at least another year away, and we were 6 weeks from when it was supposed to open. To get everything done, and all the wings, and all the operating rooms, and all the wiring, and all the air conditioning, and Swami also said, on the opening day, we will have not 1 but 2 open heart surgeries on the first day that we open. So of course we were concentrating on getting 1 theater done, and we had the leading doctors in India that came from Delhi who were actually running the hospital. They'd run the biggest hospitals.
You had to find them as well.
Oh, they're the devotees, they just come. Sai Baba has hundreds of millions of devotees and Indians. He can call anybody and they arrive the next day. It's just the way it goes around here. And India, he's the guru of gurus, and of course quite controversial in other parts of the world. But anyway, we're just looking at each other and said, we've got to go tell him that it's not going to happen. You know, we had barely the beginning of 1 wing finished. We had the shell, but it was just a mud floor, and you know, there was the big hallway that connects everything was all mud, and we said, we've got to go over and tell him that we can't do it. And we look up, we've just been talking about it, and here he comes in his car, and he hops out, and big smile, and he said, the Prime Minister's coming in 6 weeks. Yes, Swami, we know. We said, we're opening the hospital, and said, we're going to do 2 operations. Yes, Swami, we know. He said, let me show you where the Prime Minister will walk. And he said, first he will come into the big dome, and that's where all of the VIPs and the governors and the this and all and so forth, and the industrialists and all this VIP crowd will be. Then we will walk out this doorway into this hallway. We will then go into the big hall, which is all mud, and we will turn left, and we will go up these steps, and we will go into the first bay of the cardiac wing, which has the beds in it, there were like bays like this. He said, we'll then take the Prime Minister into the operating theater. He will see the first operation begin. He will then come back exactly the same way, and we'll go out and get in his helicopter and leave. So he told us exactly what we had to finish by the time the Prime Minister came. So I mean, we were that morning putting marble floors down in the big dome on top of mud, which had to go and take up later and put concrete down. We finished the little hallway, we finished the steps, we finished the operating theater, we put up big tarps around the other so you couldn't see that actually the hospital wasn't finished at all. And the Prime Minister came, and it was a big ceremony and a big greeting and so forth, and Sai Baba took him exactly on the route, and it looked as if it was absolutely functioning. There were people in the beds, they were waiting for the operations, the doctors were there, everything was done. And
there were 2 open heart surgeries
yes,
that day.
Yes.
So it was functioning in a limited way.
It's from that day on, they continued the operations, and I'll be damned those 2 people are still alive, because there was more dust in that place than you could shake a stick at. And the mortality rate, I think you've read some of it's now 18 years later. Millions of people have been through this hospital, all poor primarily, but even the great devotees who have wealth, because of their belief in Sai Baba, have their operations here. The finest doctors in India are here. The finest doctors who are devotees from around the world come here and bring their whole operating teams, and we'll spend 6 months working here. There's a beautiful man from St. Louis, and there's another group out of England, and there's another group out of here and there. And it is absolutely free. The operations are all high-end operations. They would cost you somewhere around $250,000, $300,000 to have one of these operations in the United States: open heart surgery, bypass surgery, putting plinths in, doing all these different things just in the heart division. And then they went on to open urology and a urology wing where they do all kinds of transplants and liver and gallbladder and all that sort of thing. And he did it in stages. He made sure that everything was running properly, and then he'd open the next department and the next department and the next. And it's a miracle, especially if I was sitting at the table of all the men at the World Health Organization. Here it is 18 years later. This town was always famous for being the home of Sai Baba. It's now just as famous for being the only operating high-end free hospital that exists in the world.